Good afternoon, you guys. This video is about Reiki, and I'm calling it the missing link. And the reason for that is I've always wondered why Reiki was different than the laying on of hands, because it just seems to me that if it's the laying on of hands and it's what Jesus did, why is it now called Reiki? So I did a bunch of reading here and there, and eventually I found something that rings really true for me in one of my books that I forgot I even had. It's called The Essential Reiki by Diane Stein. And in it, she gives this great synopsis of how how the Reiki lineage came through originally from Jesus, from the laying on of hands. So I was thrilled to find that because that's what I've always believed happened and never found the link. And the way she describes it is when Jesus was born, he was born obviously under the auspicious signs that we all know of, and according to the Bible, he was visited by three wise men, and the three wise men were made aware of his birth because of the unusual astrological configuration that happened at his birth. And the visionaries had all been told that there would be a boy born that would bring a new spiritual practice to the world, and that would bring the law of one back. So they were actually looking for him already, or in knowledge of his birth about to happen. So unfortunately, also King Herod, who was the king of Judea at that time, had also been told by his visionaries that there would be a boy born who would upset Roman rule, so he also was looking for him. So either in response to that or because they just knew it also, these three wise men came from the east in order to bring Jesus safely to the east to be trained and to grow up and to be prepared for his life as a visionary. So how it went was Jesus was taken to the Middle East, to Egypt and later to India, where he lived most of his early life, and he was trained. He was also brought to a Buddhist type monastery that was in Qumran at that time, which is at the base of the Dead Sea, where later the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And he was trained in that time by the ancient peoples who probably originally came from Mu or Lemuria or Atlantis, one of those lost continents that were highly evolved way before we came here, and that were destroyed later in a flood. And so this is so cool to me. He was trained in those arts and did not return to Jerusalem until his early 30s, which also correlates with the Bible. And it does state in the New Testament that he taught his disciples the laying on of hands. So that's where that part ends up. But there was always the missing link between how did it go from there to being called Reiki and being brought to the United States. So the lineage as we see it from there is that there was a man named Dr. Mikao Usui who was living in Japan and had a clinic in Japan for healing, and he was asked by his disciples, we want to learn the laying on of hands. We want to know how Jesus did it. How can we learn the laying on of hands? And he realized that he didn't know. So he began a search for that, including a short time in the United States where he came here and he apparently learned to read Sanskrit. So he brought that knowledge back to Japan, and he was able to read the ancient text in Sanskrit, which did explain to him that there was a healing method called the laying on of hands, but unfortunately there was nothing in the writings that he found that explained how to transmit it to other people. So he went on another quest. He went on a 3-week mystical quest and sat at the base of Mount Koriyama in Japan. And at the end of those 3 weeks, he saw a blinding light coming towards him that came through his middle eye in a series of light transmissions. And during that series of light transmissions, he was given the way and the symbols to teach Reiki. And since he was Japanese, he named it Reiki, which means universally guided life force energy. So there we have the missing link. And the way it came to the United States was he taught Reiki for quite a number of years there. He taught a woman. She brought it to Hawaii. It was eventually brought to the United States, and there The International Center for Reiki Training was founded by William Rand, and I received my training in Reiki from there. And there is, from people who are trained in the International Center for Reiki Training, there is a direct lineage back to Dr. Mikao Usui. And so what Reiki is the original laying on of hands that Jesus did. And the reason it is called Reiki is only because the man who brought it back from the ancient times was Japanese, and he named it what it truly is, which is universally guided life force energy. So there you have it, the missing link for Reiki. Namaste.